I do see we have a quorum. And so I'm going to call the meeting to order at 1:02 and just ask Brittany Isles to confirm that we have a quorum.
I can verify that there's a quorum present.
Okay, thanks. So we'll get started, and if we get another director, we'll welcome them to the meeting. So first up are matters subsequent to the posting of agenda. Do any directors have any matters to bring up in this meeting? Not seeing any hands. Okay, so let's go to public comment on items not on the agenda. So for our attendees, if you could raise your hand on my screen, that's at the bottom, the raise hand feature, if you want to make a comment on anything not on the agenda. And just confirming that at least right before the meeting, we had no written comments submitted.
That is correct.
Thank you. So I'm not seeing hands on that either. And welcome Vicken for MCE. So we'll move on to the consent calendar. We have 3 items, 2 sets of minutes for April 20 and May 31, and then the resolution to allow us to continue meeting virtually. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Does anybody wish to pull any item? Okay, let's go and see if there's any public comments on the consent calendar. Again, use the raised hand features if you have a public comment. Not seeing any hands, so let's bring it back. Is there a motion for the consent calendar?
Chair, I'll move approval.
Silicon Valley with a second by Peninsula. So let's take a roll on the consent calendar.
Okay. For the consent agenda, Central Coast Community Energy is absent. Clean Power SF?
Yes.
East Bay Community Energy is absent. Marin Clean Energy?
Yes.
Peninsula Clean Energy?
Yes.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority?
Yes.
San Jose Clean Energy?
Yes.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy?
Yes.
Sonoma Clean Power Authority?
Yes.
Valley Clean Energy is also absent.
I'm recognizing Dawn Wise has arrived, so I believe she'll be the representative for MC in this meeting.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. So thank you, Vicken, for helping us achieve a quorum. I appreciate it. So we're moving on to the regular calendar. First item up, there's 2 sections to that that the chair and vice chair are bringing to you. First up is approving a budget allowance for a strategic plan. And I apologize that this came to you without prior discussion, but it arose in part because we were considering how long to propose extending the general manager's contract. And one of the issues that arose that's discussed in both this and the next item was being unclear whether we were going to do a search for a permanent GM or extend Tim Haynes' contract, and if so, by how long. So as it relates to this item, one of the things that I believe could be very helpful for CC Power is to really have a discussion about the long-term purpose and value of the organization, and to make it quite detailed, to consider a number of options, perhaps over the next 3 years. And I think to date, we've had a very narrow focus on fulfilling procurement orders. And I think there is a possibility, at least, to expand the scope of CC Power to more kinds of voluntary procurements and many other things, as I just sort of wasn't trying to be comprehensive, but in the staff report was listing some of the kinds of options we might consider over time. And I think I've heard individually members talking about the value of CC Power doing things as diverse as applying for CPUC energy efficiency or program management funds and administering the paperwork for us as a central kind of entity, or helping prepare the long-term procurement for offshore wind. and many other things. And I think rather than thinking about individual proposals completely ad hoc and by themselves, I think having some form of strategic plan will force a really healthy discussion among board members about what our interests are and what we need to prepare to do. And so it's definitely my strong recommendation that we go through a process over the next 6 months to collect more ideas than what's in this staff report, and then discuss them and prioritize and think about what are the long-term budget implications, what are the staffing implications, what are our general agreements about who CC Power wants to be in the next 3 years. And so I think the report tries to outline some of the objectives as I envision it, but I also would like to form an ad hoc to improve on that. And there was one typo in the report. The last question on page 11 of the packet says, to understand what conditions should CC Power expend its membership, which sounds a little dramatic. Expand was the intended word there, so apologies about that. One thing I'd like to ask, unfortunately, 2 of the members couldn't make this meeting, but I'd like to ask Lori from San Jose, Garish from Silicon Valley, and Mitch from Valley Clean Energy to serve on an ad hoc and at least head up the process to coordinate communication with the board and to really work on a strategic plan. This item, the formal action, is to allow them to consider using a budget up to $50,000 to have outside help for that work without any requirement, obviously, to spend the money if we can do more of that internally. And I think one of the elements that I would add to the timeline proposal, because the timeline was pretty high level, the proposal begins with forming an ad hoc today on June 15, and then I would like to insert that at the very next meeting, the ad hoc come back and propose a process for getting significant board input throughout this process. I think that was missing from the timeline. And I think that's a really, really key element of this, is the ad hoc should not be working in a vacuum and should definitely be taking direction from the board from time to time. And then also, when available, perhaps by September is my imagining, that they would have at least an idea of who they're interested in engaging with from the outside if that outside support is necessary. So it's my recommendation, and on behalf of Lori Mitchell from San Jose and Tim Haynes, to start a strategic action plan and to authorize a budget allowance of up to $50,000. The proposal includes, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, that dollar figure is shared. Yes, that the costs are shared equally among all members. So with that, I would start by seeing if members have questions about this before turning to comments. So are there any questions about this proposal? I saw Barbara Hale coming off mute. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jeff. I noticed that in the subsequent item, which you said this, kind of tumbled into this one, it's referred to as a business plan. This item refers to it as a strategic plan. I heard you say strategic action plan. So I just think we need to get clear on what this is. I think the questions that are raised are a wonderful illustration of the intention. I just think it gets confusing if we refer to it as multiple different things.
Understood, and apologies, those drafts were made at different times and I didn't go back and correct the second item. So I think
that is the referenced plan, though, and the second item is referencing this plan.
Yes, understood.
Yeah.
Apologies for that typo.
And
go ahead.
And with that, I would just say, I think it makes sense what you're proposing here. I appreciate that the vice chair and chair and interim general manager took this step. I think it'll be very helpful in addressing, getting a collective vision and in addressing what sort of skills and knowledge and abilities we want out of a general manager. So thank you.
Super, thank you. I'll turn to Director Balachandran.
Thank you, Chair. I really Like the idea. Thank you for pulling this together. I kind of think of CC Power, we're going through different phases of our maturation, right? We had the pre-formation kind of desire to put something together. We put it together. We're kind of ending kind of like maybe at what I'd call phase 1, where we have 4 projects in place. So I think this is very timely to kind of set us up for, all right, what's that next step we want to be looking at? And I just picked up the JPA, CC Power JPA, the first whereas clause actually has, it's a bit of a vision kind of statement of the different things we could be looking at. And that was pulled together prior to forming the JPA and having discussions with all the interested CCAs as to the kinds of things they were looking for. So I'm really excited about seeing what we can come up with, and I will be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'm not seeing a lot of hands, so let's go ahead and take any comments as well before we turn to public comment. Any other comments on this item? Director Pepper.
Similar to Garish and Barbara's comments, I think this is great, and for us to figure out what we want to focus on over the next few years. So I'm fully supportive of it. I guess one thing I might want to suggest is that when we look at it, that we also talk about how we deal with labor as we move forward as well.
I'd like to acknowledge that we committed about a year ago to returning it and having a discussion about labor and environmental practice in procurement. And so I agree with your comment, and we'll be planning to ask the board to agendize a date later this year to have that kind of a discussion. So I thank you for reminding us all of that.
Thank
Any
you.
more input on this before we go to the public? Okay, so let's turn to public comment. So folks who would wish to speak, please raise your hand on item 6A, first part I. This is a complex numbering system. Not seeing hands raised. So I'll bring it back for a motion.
I'll move it. Barbara Hale.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Jan.
I saw San Francisco and Peninsula. So let's take a roll.
Okay, for resolution 220602, Central Coast Community Energy is absent. Clean Power SF,
Yes.
East Bay Community Energy,
I just got here towards the end, so I'm going to abstain.
thank you. Marin Clean Energy,
Yes.
Peninsula Clean Energy,
Yes.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority,
Yeah, I apologize. I didn't get more background information on this before now, but I actually am not certain I have the authority to approve the spending that we're looking at, which it sounds like it'll be about 10,000 per member. And so I think I'm going to have to abstain, but let me know if you need me to do more research and revote at some point.
Okay, abstaining is fine for now, thank you. San Jose Clean Energy,
Yes.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy,
Yes.
Sonoma Clean Power Authority,
Yes.
and Valley Clean Energy is absent. So with 6 yes votes, the resolution passes. Thank you.
Thank you. And one clarification, I think the maximum budget approval was for up to 50,000 to be shared equally among all the members, but so I don't think it would be 10,000, but your point is still well taken, alternate director of BND. So thanks. So with that, I'll move to the second item in 6A, And this is a proposed 12-month extension to our interim general manager's contract. And kind of referring back to the last item, I think this allows us plenty of time to do strategic planning. And should that plan identify additional staffing needs or additional time from a general manager, it would also allow us plenty of time, I think, to do a recruitment and to find out if our current general manager is interested in that role, or to do a long-term, potentially even up to 6-month recruitment for a permanent position. So the proposal is for converting the current contract to a flat rate of $10,000 a month. And that piece of the proposal came directly from Tim Haynes, and I strongly encourage the board to consider that. We currently have Mr. Haynes under an hourly agreement, but he routinely exceeds his hours, and we do not offer him more compensation. And I think out of respect, offering a flat rate is a little bit more candidly honest, that we're only offering him a certain amount of money regardless of the hours worked. And before I use a proposal for $10,000 a month for $120,000 for the year, with half of that going to general operations and the remaining half split between long duration storage and firm clean resources management. So with that, I will turn it over to board for any questions or input. Does anybody have any input on this item? Director Balachandi.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Tim, for being willing to serve. And I just wanted to kind of confirm what Jeff was saying. And all of us, this is not a full-time position. This is still a part-time position. You've just changed the way in which the contract is how Tim is being compensated. Okay.
Thank you for that clarification. Yes, indeed.
Okay.
Any other comments on this? Not seeing any. Okay, let's turn to public comment on a 12-month extension of our general manager's contract. Any public comment? Not seeing any there. I'll bring it back for a motion. Anyone wish to make this motion? So Director
Yeah, I'd like to
move. Okay. And a second.
I'll second. This is Jan.
All right, Director Pepper second. So let's take this roll.
Okay, for resolution 220603, Central Coast Community Energy absent. Clean Power SF,
Yes.
East Bay Community Energy,
Yes.
Marin Clean Energy,
Yes.
Peninsula Clean Energy,
Yes.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority,
Yes.
San Jose Clean Energy,
Yes.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy,
Yes.
Sonoma Clean Power Authority,
Yes.
and Valley Clean Energy is absent. Thank you. The resolution passes.
Thank you, Tim Haynes. I appreciate your good work. Looking forward to another year. And I'll turn it over to you for your general manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to the board for extending the contract and giving me the opportunity to be able to follow through on what it is that we've accomplished with the long duration storage and firm clean resource contracts. Also, I'm extremely excited to be able to support the ad hoc committee in developing the 3-year plan. I think that it is a good time for us to take that initiative on, and I think that it'll provide us good insight into where it is that we go next. And so I'll just leave it with that, but I'm very excited about this opportunity, and I really look forward to supporting the organization as we move forward. Brittany, I'm sorry, Chris, could you go to the slide deck that I provided? I forwarded this to all members, and so hopefully you've had a chance to digest this. I'm going to go through it fairly quickly. It's an update on the projects as well as the budget. There's no action here. It's setting the stage for our July board meeting, where I envision coming back to the board with a budget amendment to the 2022 budget. Chris, if you could go forward to the first material slide. Yes, thank you. I'm going to start the discussion with some information with regard to the projects that we have in front of us. This is a simplified graphic of the project development process that the board had approved in April of 2021. If you, there's more description, more specificity with regard to this that I can provide you if you want the insight that when you approve this, what we had is greater clarification as to the description of each of these steps or phases, the authorities that the board grants, as well as then how it is that the costs are allocated amongst them. The important point that I wanted to make here is that both Firm Clean Resources and long duration storage have moved through the second phase of this process. And we're now transitioning into the third phase. Whereas we had relied on board policy and practices in order to be able to administer our responsibilities in these first three phases, when we get into phase 3, those activities are going to be prescribed under the project agreements that the board has approved for the Firm Clean Resources and the long duration storage. Now, the board will retain its authority, over the contracts, and setting budgets is an example, and your procurement staff will continue to advise on all aspects of the contract administration. So, materially, there's not going to be a big change as we transition, but it's now our activities are more prescriptive than they have been in the past. We'll certainly exercise judgment along the way, but we need to adhere to our contractual obligations. Chris, if you would go to the next slide. Getting more specific, what this table shows is that with the Goal Line and the Tumbleweed projects, the project agreements are fully executed. We certainly have some interim milestones before we get to the commercial operation dates in the 2026 time period, but I thought it would just be helpful to give you an endpoint that we have with these projects and what it is that we'll be working toward going forward. With the Ormat and Open Mountain agreements, we're in this gray area between the phase 2 and phase 3. We have the PPAs executed for these agreements. Now we're in the project board approval process, which will last through September. With these two projects, we're expecting the online dates in early 2024. One of the things that I'm working with your staff is to be able to understand what it is that we have in terms of activities for both the long duration storage and the Firm Clean Resources as we transition into this third phase of the contracts, or of the process. Chris, let's go to the next slide. This is what the project agreements have formalized in terms of the organization structure. It includes the agreements that we have basically set forth the roles of the board, the participant staff, and the CC Power general manager. Each of these projects is going to have its own project committee. The general manager is a non-voting member of these committees, but also is the chair of the committees. And then, as I said earlier, the board retains final authority in all matters related to these projects. Again, I'm working with your staff right now in order to be able to get these projects organized, identify what our responsibilities are as we move these projects through the permitting process into the construction and then toward operation. And we're also developing a budget proposal that will be brought to you in July. Let's go now to the budget that we'll discuss briefly here in more depth in July. When we approved this budget in December, there was a lot of uncertainty as to how many long duration storage contracts we would have, firm clean resource contracts. And so what we did was we recognized that we would have to come back and amend the budget in order to be able to support the second half of the year activities. And so, that's the process that we're going through right now. This bit of information, what follows, is but a primer for what it is that we have in front of us with the July board meeting in order to be able to pull that budget for the remainder of the year together. With the general budget, this shows, who is charging, the budget limits that we have to the general budget that racks up to the $261,000. The project budget, similarly, it shows, the contract limits that we have for the different elements to this. And that is what the board, the extent to which the board had approved for the general and for the project budgets, which then leads to this next slide, which provides basically a graphic representation of where it is that we stand structurally with the budget at this point in time. Now, one of the things that I want to caution you is that this is not intended to be a balance sheet. So you're not going to be able to see that you're able to, go through each of these columns and rows. And for instance, the January through December general budget or project budgets aren't intended to equal what the budget total number is on the right-hand most column. All I was trying to do with this is to help you understand that for January through May, here's actually what it is that we've invoiced against this budget in these three categories for the year. And then for the period of time, June through December, these are projections as to what it is that we will be expensed in that period of time. The general budget has largely been structured in a way that it's a retainer. And so we can reasonably track what it is that we can regionally project what it is that we're going to encounter on a month-to-month basis in order to be able to get to the total budgeted amount in the general budget case of $261,000. In the firm clean resources and the long duration storage, these follow the contours of the negotiations. And so these are actual invoice numbers that we have here. But the takeaway is that when we budgeted for 2022, we did not intend to budget beyond phase 2 or the negotiations that we've just completed. So going back to the general budget, when I come back in July with an amendment, what you will see is that I'm anticipating that there will be an amendment to the general budget. For instance, for 2022, we budgeted for 6 board meetings for the entire year. Today is the 6th board meeting that we've had this year so far. So we're going to need to address that. With regard to the firm clean resources and long duration storage, there are outstanding invoices that I've yet to receive. There are some future expenditures that we'll have with firm clean resources, but with both the firm clean resources and the long duration storage, we'll have gone through the budgeted amount for both of those within the next 6 weeks. And so what we'll need to be able to do is come back and fill in the budgeted amounts to be able to administer the contracts that we have in front of us. Now, I'm working with the general counsel, with the your staff and our consultants in order to be able to come up with a budget proposal. And what we will do is when we come back, we'll describe the activities that we have in front of us, a budget projection, and then a recommendation for your consideration. And so again, this is a primer for what it is that we have in front of us for the July board meeting. I wanted to just take the opportunity to lay this out for you, get you to begin thinking about it, and then also your feedback on how it is that I can communicate this information to you in a meaningful way so that it will assist you in being able to digest the recommendation and ultimately support a budget. So, Mr. Chair, this is really what I wanted to go over with the board this afternoon, and I'm open to questions that anyone may have.
Thank you. So I think this is a preliminary pre-proposal discussion. And so I think things that would be helpful would be reactions to what you've seen, and also anything that you might want to see brought for the July meeting as well, as far as additional information and support. So I'll turn to Director Wise.
Yeah, thank you. I was just gonna add that it could be helpful to have a little bit more of a breakdown of what are the different line items between each of the budgets. The summary slide that you just had up is really helpful, but a little more detail would be great to have in advance of the meeting, a week in advance or so, so that we know what's going into all of those summary numbers.
Thank you. Now, Director Weiss, are you thinking that it would be helpful to look retrospectively or prospectively, or both?
I think both.
Will do.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other input on this process? I know our treasurer is absent this meeting, but I know you will, but I'll just say it for the public meeting that coordinating with the treasurer in advance of July is expected by the board. So, but I know you're already on that. So, any other input? All right. Let's see if there's any public comment on this report. So folks from the public, if you want to comment on the general manager's reports, either the update on Long-Duration Storage and Firm Clean Resources or the CC Power budget, please raise your hand. Not seeing hands raised. I'll pull it back and there's no action on this item. So with that, I will go to discussion of any individual member items. Does anyone have any announcements or news? Good news is always welcome. I'm not seeing anything, so I'll just toss one out. We just had our 3,000th visitor to our Advanced Energy Center yesterday on our 1-year anniversary. So we're happy we beat our goal. So hopefully we'll keep seeing an increase over time. I think unless anybody's thought of something, anybody? Oh, Director Balachandran.
Yeah, we sent you all a press release. We announced a deal with Google. So this is something that's been in the works for a couple of years. So we're really happy about that. Trying to get to more of a 24/7 carbon-free delivery. That's not going to work for our entire portfolio right now, but it will work for someone sophisticated as Google. And the idea is to expand this to more customers. So the press release does have a link to a case study, which has a lot more information. And yeah, just happy to announce that.
Congratulations. That's a big deal. All right, I'm not seeing other hands. I am seeing applause. With that, I will adjourn the meeting at 1:40 p.m. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.